The American dream has always been about optimism in the future. Now we've got stadiums full of people chanting, "Let's go, Brandon." Wilkow starts now. Welcome to the program. I'm Andrew Wilkow. The Democrats are killing the American dream. The American dream, by its very definition, is that no matter where one starts out in life, if we work hard and play by the rules, we have a chance, keyword, to achieve whatever we want in life. Again, keyword chance. We're guaranteed nothing, and we must work for whatever it is we want. Play by the rules. That's another part of it. That's also known as following the law. But the Democrats right now are creating one set of rules or laws for the citizen and another set for the non-citizen, whereas the non-citizen is being treated with an advantage as related to the law. To be blunt, the Democrats just don't want to enforce the law on the non-citizen. The non-citizen cannot have inalienable rights inside the United States, while the Bill of Rights is under review by the Democrats and the courts. The very notion that asylum seekers, refugees, migrants, and other illegal border crossers are somehow entitled to something inalienable, while the citizen finds the grip of government tightening ever more, is repugnant at best and destructive at worst. You know, what attracts legal, keyword, legal immigrants to this country is the American dream, and a big part of that is the rule of law. See, it's the rule of law that protects our freedoms and our freedom to acquire things that we want for ourselves. Yes, to live the good life. On the other side, the massive taxing and spending. What is happening right now is unprecedented. The American dream cannot survive endless multi-trillion-dollar tax and giveaway packages. You have to understand, the left in this country thinks that it should be a gift to all mankind, but paid for by you.
And I told the story, Jake, of coming to this country at 16 years old. My parents had nothing in their pockets. They sent me alone. I arrived here alone with nothing in my pockets.
From where?
From India, because my parents, for whatever reason, believed that America was the place where I was going to be able to have a different kind of a life, an opportunity. And I did. I went to college, I went to graduate school, and then I went from nothing in my pockets at 16 by myself to actually sitting in the Oval Office with the president as the first South Asian American woman in the House. And I said that I had the American dream. We have to be able to deliver the American dream for everyone.
For everyone? You heard it, right? She said, we have to deliver the American dream for everyone. You know, the government has no divine resources. We simply have to pay more in taxes just to have less for ourselves. And if that wasn't bad enough, the Democrats are also raising the debt ceiling simply to cover the cost of their insane spending packages. Check out Senator Joe Manchin as he sits behind Chuck Schumer. He's like everyone watching the rise of our nation's debt.
The Senate will pass an extension of the debt limit through early December, avoiding a first-ever Republican-manufactured default on the national debt. On Monday morning, I said we needed to pass a bill to address the debt limit by the end of the week, and that is exactly what we did. Republicans played a dangerous and risky partisan game, and I am glad that their brinksmanship did not work. For the good of America's families, for the good of our economy, Republicans must recognize in the future that they should approach fixing the debt limit in a bipartisan way. What is needed now is a long-term solution, so we don't go through this risky drama every few months. And we hope Republicans will join in enacting a long-term solution to the debt limit in December. We're ready to work with them. Leader McConnell and Senate Republicans insisted they wanted a solution to the debt ceiling, but said Democrats must raise it alone by going through a drawn-out, convoluted, and risky reconciliation process. That was simply unacceptable to my caucus. And yesterday, Senate Republicans finally realized that their obstruction was not going to work.
Oh, settle down, Chuck. In the end, you had a little help from Mitch McConnell, but that's a separate topic. The nation cannot continue if one of the two major parties favors the non-citizen over the citizen. That must be the new American dream, right? When the Democrats want to flex the muscle of the federal government on the citizen, they do it. The non-citizen, they act like, what? What do you want us to do? That's impossible. We can't do all of that.
There are a lot of Republicans out there giving speeches about how outraged they are about the situation at the border, not many who are putting forward solutions or steps that we could take. So we're a little tired of the speeches. We'd like to partner on solutions and working together to address this problem that has not been partisan in the past.
Actually, it's pretty simple. It's pretty simple. Put these all together. Cut the spending, enforce the law, uphold our sovereignty. In a sovereign society, with the democratic process, not democracy, and capitalism, the force of the central government is mostly projected outward to protect the citizens. In a dictatorial and communist society, the force of the central government is turned inward to control the citizens. Between unconstitutional vaccine mandates and a refusal to secure the border, the Democrat Party is sunsetting everything that made the American dream work for millions and millions of law-abiding citizens. The Biden administration wants to now add almost 90,000 new IRS agents. To do what? Well, this.
Secretary Yellen, speaking of horrified, my constituents cannot believe that you support a proposal to require banks and credit unions to report customer data to the Internal Revenue Service for transactions of $600 or more. There are obvious privacy concerns for all Americans here, and this represents a dramatic new regulatory burden for community banks and credit unions in Wyoming and elsewhere. Our banks will have to hire contractors to rat on their customers, implement new computer software, deploy resources better used elsewhere in order to collect data for the government. Bank customers are not subjects of the federal government. Banks do not work for the IRS. This is invasive of privacy. Do you distrust the American people so much that you need to know when they bought a couch or a cow? I am astounded by what you're supporting and proposing. I think it's invasive. I think privacy for individuals is getting ignored. And I think treating the American people like they are subjects of the government is unconscionable.
That's right. The Democrats want the IRS to know every time you withdraw or deposit $600. Nothing says the American dream like the federal government treating honest, hardworking citizens like criminals. So again, when they want to flex the muscle of the federal government, they will. And they'll have almost 90,000 new hires to help them. But at the border, zero. No new hires. They actually want to abolish the Border Patrol and ICE. Break the law by crossing the border illegally, and off you go.
Of the 17,400 that weren't deported back or didn't return on their own to Mexico, how many of them first, how many have been released into the U.S.?
They're released on conditions,
yes.
and approximately, I think it's about 10,000 or so, 12,000.
Have been released?
Yes.
So the Biden administration trusts them, not you. Criminals are the trusted one. Look at this nice video from our friends over at Breitbart. Take a look at this.
Yeah. Can you down? Sure. Yeah, you go. I'll grab you. I was there right here. If it is open down there, yeah. I'm just right here.
Nothing to stop them. No law enforcement. Now Democrats are literally threatening to replace hardworking Americans, many of whom worked through the worst days of the pandemic and got COVID themselves, and since recovered only to find out that the vaccine mandates may actually put them out of work. From our own theblaze.com, quote, New York Governor Kathy Hochul delivered a very unforgiving threat to unvaccinated healthcare workers. The Democratic governor told New York hospital and nursing home employees to get vaccinated against COVID-19 before the state's September 27th deadline or be replaced potentially by foreign workers. Quote Governor Hochul. I'm not aware of a sanctioned religious exemption from any organized religion. In fact, they are encouraging the opposite. They are encouraging their members. Everybody from the Pope on down is encouraging people to get vaccinated. To those who won't, we'll be replacing people. And I have a plan that's going to be announced very shortly. We're also reaching out to the Department of State to find out about visas for foreign workers on a limited basis to bring more nurses over here, unquote. First, you'll be replaced by the non-citizen. Then you'll be denied the unemployment that you paid for in your taxes. Quote, employees at New York State hospitals, adult care, and long-term care facilities who are fired or quit because they don't want to follow the state's vaccine mandate for healthcare workers won't be allowed to collect unemployment benefits in most cases. Absent a valid request for accommodation, these workers won't be able to collect unemployment benefits because these are workplaces where an employer has a compelling interest in such a mandate, especially if they already require other immunizations, according to the New York Department of Labor website. For the record, illegal immigrants are getting big money from the government right now. Quote, undocumented New Yorkers whose homes and belongings were destroyed by the remnants of Hurricane Ida earlier this month can receive as much as $72,000 in financial assistance under a new relief program rolled out by the state and city officials on Monday. The $27 million program aims to ensure that undocumented residents whose immigration status excludes them from most federal relief programs can receive the same type of Ida aid as their citizen neighbors, Governor Hochul said. Quote, this is a day that demonstrates one thing, that every New Yorker matters, Hochul said during a press conference at the Queens Museum in Flushing. Let me repeat that. Every New Yorker matters. That's right. Every New Yorker matters, unless, of course, you're refusing the vaccine. Then the hell with you. By the way, the same thing is going on all across the country in the blue states. Quote, President Joe Biden signed 2 executive orders on Thursday. One requires vaccinations for all federal workers and contractors, and the other requires companies with more than 100 employees to either get vaccinated or require weekly testing. Though this allows some employers to give their workers a choice in getting vaccinated, certain companies such as Walmart and Disney say they will require that some employees get the vaccine. In those cases, people who refuse the vaccine have a chance of losing their jobs. People who are fired for breaking company policies are not eligible for unemployment payment and benefits in most parts of the country. Okay, let's take a little turn here. The Democrats want to plunge us so far into debt that we're not likely to recover. Tax the rich, they scream, like they haven't been doing that. Next, multi-trillion-dollar spending packages. There's $1.5 trillion just for infrastructure, another $3.5 trillion for nothing but unconstitutional giveaways that everyone thinks they're going to get something for free, will eventually pay dearly for. But here's the Speaker of the House. Don't think about numbers here.
So again, the Senate and the House, those who are not in full agreement with the president's rate. Let's see what our value. Let's not talk about numbers. And dollars. Let's talk about values.
Yeah, right. Why talk about dollars? It's only taxes. Now let's actually listen to the chairman of the Budget Committee, Representative John Yarmuth.
I read Joe Manchin's statement. I've listened to him. He has no understanding of how the federal government monetary system works. When he compared it yesterday to his household income, that has no relevance to what we can do. It's not a question of what we can afford. The federal government can afford anything that it feels it needs to do. And right now, that's what we ought to be focused on. So, that's kind of the position I took in the Budget Committee. That's the position I will take going forward.
So the government can afford anything its big heart desires. Again, the government has no divine resources. The American dream is not to have leftists make undeliverable promises while they fill up the voter rolls with people streaming across the border, breaking our laws. And this moronic idea, it's gaining traction in the media.
The bill itself will not cost $3.5 trillion in the sense that it will be entirely or at least partly paid for. So the actual cost in terms of deficits will be smaller than that, perhaps even zero, although I think that's unlikely.
She's really smart. Zero? Zero? The only way out of this mess would be to impose a congressional rescission as per the 1974 Budget Control and Impoundment Act, which allows Congress to rescind funds. The trillions that was allocated for non-COVID relief could be taken back and reallocated to pay the bills and prevent default. The idea that the government would purposely increase the dependent population to justify raising taxes is the opposite of the American dream. So here's the argument. No, we cannot gift the American dream to every human being on earth. Non-citizens cannot have rights in our nation before we do. The American dream has never been the expectation that some Americans would work twice as hard to come home with half as much, while others work half as hard to come home with twice as much at the same time, especially when the government is giving away billions to people who aren't even here legally. We the people, we must follow every code, rule, law, even the fiat orders of bureaucrats, while others don't have to follow any rules at all. If Americans refuse the vaccine, they might be put out on the street, while untested people are crossing the border illegally and getting gifts from the Biden administration. The rules have to apply to everyone, including the government. The American dream does not include a government full of false prophets making false promises that in the end, the people who were told everything would be free would not only have to pay, but pay even more. The American dream does not involve a government that does not trust the law-abiding individuals with his or her own money, but does trust illegal border jumpers to show up for court dates like 18 months later to decide their fate. All the while, the Democrats are trying to force us into ever more spending programs that are going to force even more citizens to give their choices over things like pre-K. The American dream cannot survive $40 trillion and growing in debt and the taxes that will come. You know what? Numbers are real. The debt is real. Americans do not dream about making a choice between a vaccine and being able to earn a living. I can end here with some cliche about nightmares, but I'll spare you. The American dream does not belong to big government Democrats in the media. The people screaming at you that you're selfish for wanting the good life have for themselves everything they think you should be denied. Our rights matter. The rule of law matters. Our border matters. Without these, there is no American dream. Josh Mandel has been a guest on my radio program on SiriusXM Patriot. He's a Marine and one of the true conservatives running for the U.S. Senate out of Ohio, alongside Sam Brown in Nevada, Kathy Barnett in Pennsylvania, also all veterans. But he was recently tossed out of a school board meeting. You put that headline up? Now, this is at a time when the FBI is descending on local school board meetings. For what reason, I have no idea. But Josh Mandel is joining us right now. How you doing, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
Okay, so you get a visit from Merrick Garland, from the FBI. What happened?
So I'm speaking at this school board meeting. I was invited by a mom. It's in a district called Lakota, which is by Cincinnati. And the mom's invited me to speak on two issues, stopping mask mandates, and then also stopping the critical race theory from being taught to kids. And so I got up there and I started talking about the fact that I believe these mask mandates are wrong, that it should be up to moms and dads, not up to faceless bureaucrats and school officials. And then they started cutting me off. And then I started talking about critical race theory and how critical race theory lies to kids. You know, it divides people down racial lines. It stomps on the grave of Martin Luther King, and there's nothing good or positive about it. And I was there in accordance with the rules of the school board. Again, this mom yielded her time to me as her designee. And the school board at this district, like so many school boards here in Ohio and throughout the country, they are afraid of parents. They are afraid of parents controlling their kids' education. We heard Terry McAuliffe the other day in Virginia say that he does not want parents to have any say of how their kids are educated. This is insanity. I mean, this country's going crazy. The secular left, the radical left, the school bureaucrats, the teacher unions, they're literally trying to indoctrinate our kids. And when someone like me, as a father and a taxpayer, shows up at a meeting and has the audacity to stand up for kids and for parental control of their kids, I get booted.
You know, you don't have to be a lifelong conservative to reject this notion, shut up and pay your taxes, right? If you are going to tax us for a service, then you have to hear our voices when we have concerns. But what I don't get is, what's the federal interest here? Now, Forbes had a piece the other day by Adam Andrzejewski saying that Panorama Education includes on its board of directors, this is one of those companies promoting these teaching materials on CRT and transgender and all this other stuff, is Merrick Garland's son-in-law. So, you know, you have millions and millions of dollars that are on the table for these public or government-run education contracts, and now you have the son-in-law of the Attorney General who is dispatching federal FBI agents to these local school board meetings, when I can't see the federal, even if you get a raucous group of parents, right? There are local police officers and deputies that can handle this stuff. And I'm not advocating violence. There should be no violence. People should be civil with one another. But even if there is a spat of violence, what's the federal interest here? Why are people being contacted by the suits of the DOJ?
I have no idea. It's inexcusable. I think it's a trampling of our constitutional rights. I mean, think about how chilling it is for free speech, for First Amendment constitutional rights of us as citizens, us as Americans, when our own government says that they're going to call us, quote unquote, domestic terrorists for having the audacity to show up at a local school board meeting. I mean, I would argue moms and dads showing up at local school board meetings, that's one of the oldest traditions in America. That is the epitome of democracy. That is the epitome of everything we stand for as Americans. And I share your outrage that the federal government, that the Biden administration, that Garland and others are trying to chill free speech, are trying to crack down on free speech, and are trying to punish parents for standing up for their kids' best interests. I mean, listen, we don't want school boards raising our kids. We definitely don't want politicians or bureaucrats in Washington raising our kids. It's up to us as mom and dads to do what's best for our children. And for us to be called, quote unquote, domestic terrorists for trying to fight for our kids is just outrageous. And it's also antithetical to everything I learned in the Marine Corps. You know, when I raised my right hand to join the Marines and I took that oath to defend the Constitution and defend the country against enemies, foreign and domestic, to me, someone who comes out there stomping on the constitutional rights of moms and dads, chilling the free speech of moms and dads, trying to stop moms and dads from fighting for their kids, that is a domestic enemy right there. And it's not you or me that are the domestic terrorists. It's these politicians and these bureaucrats in Washington who are trying to stomp on our constitutional rights.
All right, I think I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. After this midterm cycle, I think Republicans are going to wipe the floor with Democrats. When you are a newly minted senator, I know the answer to this question, I think, do you think it would be appropriate for the Senate, should Republicans take over and be able to take the committee chairmanships, to bring in the Attorney General and go, hey, wait a second. Your son-in-law, works for one of these companies that was promoting these materials, and all of a sudden, when parents started to get outraged, you sent FBI agents to intimidate people. Could you please, sir, Mr. Attorney General, tell this Senate panel the federal interest in these local school board meetings?
Absolutely. I can see myself doing that as a United States Senator. I look forward to doing that as a United States Senator. And there needs to be accountability. And to your point, this reeks of conflict of interest. It reeks of government officials using taxpayer money and Washington power to stuff dollars in their own pockets. This reeks of self-dealing. And I'm hopeful that these squishy establishment rhino Republicans in Washington can actually harness some strength and courage and backbone and spine and call him in front of the Judiciary Committee right now. Like, why wait until I'm a United States Senator? It should happen now. Now, listen, if it doesn't happen now, heck yeah, when I'm a United States Senator, I will lead the charge on that. But my hope is they'll do it now.
I want to get you on this. You wrote a piece for the Washington Times. The Democratic Party has become the home of Jew hatred. The Democrats are always telling us that Republicans and conservatives, Republican Party is the party of racism. Yet you saw Donald Trump do something that no other president can do, and that was to get Muslim nations to recognize Israel. He moved the embassy like other presidents had promised to and failed to do. And now the question is funding for Iron Dome, and you have the squad saying, well, no, we shouldn't be helping Israel protect itself. When did the Democratic Party, which counts Chuck Schumer, right? Dianne Feinstein, there are lots of prominent Jews in the Democratic Party. How did these prominent Jews let their party slip into the hands of anti-Semitism?
Because they're weak. And they are afraid. I mean, I'll use Schumer as an example. AOC is putting a gun to his head. AOC is saying, hey, Chuck, I'm going to run against you in a primary if you don't do what I say. And Schumer is marching lockstep with AOC. I mean, AOC, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, they are literally running the Democrat Party. They are the bosses of Schumer and Pelosi, and it looks like Biden as well. And listen, I'm in Ohio. I'm running for U.S. Senate in Ohio. I'm raising my kids in Ohio. I break bread every day in Ohio. I can tell you this. People here, whether they're Democrat, Republican, Independent, Libertarian, Vegetarian, whatever they are not into AOC and Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar. These people are crazy. Rashida Tlaib is a spokesman for Hamas. Hamas is a terrorist organization. Ilhan Omar committed immigration fraud, married her brother in order to lie to the United States to get in here. She should be deported. Not only should she not be elected, she should be deported, in my mind. And AOC is not a congressional representative. She's like a performance artist. These are not serious people, but they are very dangerous people. And I believe in my heart of hearts, the Democrat Party has become the home for Jew hatred. That Iron Dome system that you're referencing, it's not an offensive system. It has one use and one use only. And that use is to save innocent people, women, children, families. But unfortunately, because predominantly those families are Jews, Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib and their cronies, they don't care about it. But the interesting thing is, every day on social media and otherwise, I get called a bigot, a racist, an Islamophobe. It's all garbage. None of it's true. But I've actually spent over a year of my life in Anbar province, Iraq, carrying a weapon, wearing the uniform of the United States Marine Corps, protecting innocent Muslims against these radical Islamic animals who are barbaric and have no respect for life whatsoever. And so in my mind, it's just outrageous for people like you and me and others to be called Islamophobes or bigots or racist. We don't hate others. What we love is America. We love this country. We love our freedom. We love our liberty. And the last thing we want is Sharia law instituted in our country.
Absolutely. I do have to leave it there, sir. We will get you back, and I'll have you back on radio real soon. Josh Mandel, thanks for joining us.
Always good to be on.
On a side note, there are millions of people that don't pay attention to government and politics at all. They simply don't care, right? So they don't ask a whole lot of questions, and they'll pretty much let the government get away with just about anything. But the one thing that will put millions of people on the side of any generic Republican running for office will be if Christmas gets ruined. Have you seen the backlog at the ports on the East Coast and West Coast? Cargo ships just backed up, can't get anything offloaded. Not to mention the shortages that are racking up. Why? Because gas prices are through the roof, thanks to President Biden, and that's causing delays in trucking. Not to mention the vaccine mandates are costing us millions of people in the labor force, not to mention the people paying not to work. So we've got a supply chain problem, but Joe Biden has solved the problem. He's got a great idea. Listen.
But now we need the rest of the private sector chain to step up as well. This is not called a supply chain for nothing. This means that terminal operators, railways, trucking companies, shippers, and other retailers as well. Strengthening our supply chain will continue to be my team's focus. If federal support is needed, I will direct all appropriate action. And if the private sector doesn't step up, we're going to call them out and ask them to act. Because our goal is not only to get through this immediate bottleneck, but to address the long-standing weaknesses in our transportation supply chain that this pandemic has exposed. I might add, parenthetically, one of the reasons why I think it's very important that we get the infrastructure plan passed, my infrastructure plan. And that supply chain system is almost entirely in the hands of private business. The world has changed.
The problem is that the supply chain is almost entirely in the hands of the private sector. Well, why not just take it over with government? Are you serious? The reason why we have supply chain backups is because we haven't passed the infrastructure package. It's got nothing to do with skyrocketing gas prices and the trucking industry or people on the sideline because of vaccine mandates or you're paying them not to work. It's that we just haven't passed your infrastructure package. Wow, you've solved the problem. The private sector ought to step up here. Amazing. Why didn't we vote this man as president in 1988? All right, joining me in studio for the very first time is David Raboy. He is a senior fellow at the Claremont Institute and the man behind the Late Republic Nonsense Substack. Thanks for coming in studio today.
Great to be here.
You're seeing all these polls all of a sudden. I don't know if they're manufactured. Like 56% of Trump supporters want to secede from the Union. And this is ginning up a lot of animosity on social media. But I'm old enough to remember the blue exit when Democrats were saying the exact same thing when Trump got inaugurated. So is this talk for real, or do we do this now? Is this now standard stuff?
I think the answer is a little of both. The fact that it happens under Democrat administrations and Republican administrations means that the trend lines are moving reliably in one direction, which is extreme polarization, and the fact that we really have nothing in common when it comes to the most important things. The most important things, the concept of justice, equal justice under the law, how we orient ourselves between the citizen and government, the way we see government. We have a lot of differences, and these differences are not tiny, insignificant ones like, what restaurant to go to. I mean, these are the real serious differences that have occupied political philosophers, from the beginning.
I've been saying for quite some time, common purpose, different outcome. That's federalism, right? That we can't live in a society where we expect the politics of Midtown Manhattan to be forced upon people living in rural Idaho. It doesn't work that way. And I've made the joke over the years, try to imagine making a federal dog leash law. What makes sense in a major metropolitan city would not make it all, would make no sense at all in rural parts of the country. And that's okay. If we just went back to the 10th Amendment and said, California will be California, Texas will be Texas, and we'll come together for the common purpose of defending the sovereignty of the nation, the sovereignty of the union, and we will go about our business together but separately, I think we'd all be happy. I think progressives would agree to that. Some progressives.
Maybe a couple, but the progressive movement in the late 19th century was started in order to undermine in order to undermine the Constitution, but specifically that 10th Amendment. they are for rule by experts. They are for centralization. Technocrats,
Yeah.
exactly. And they think that federalism isn't just, bad, that it's evil. Every time you talk about federalism, what do they say? They say, oh, you're talking states' rights, Civil War, Confederacy, 1860s, slavery,
Jim
blah, blah, blah.
Crow.
Right. So that's their only frame. I mean, yes, it's a political warfare tactic in order to get us to shut up. And it's, completely bogus. But they really feel this way. They think that it's evil. I don't think we're going to see any action on that front. And I mean, as you say, every 4 years we have an election for the presidency where we get to decide who's in charge of the executive branch. Well, it's kind of illusory. I mean, we saw 4 years under Trump that he didn't actually have control of the executive branch. The executive branch is permanently left.
Yes, belongs to the progressives.
Right.
Because it seems like, and tell me if I'm wrong, progressives are just more interested in government work than most. That's not to say there aren't conservatives in government, but the sort of desk jockey position
Right.
of a bureaucrat seems to appeal more to somebody who wants to put their fingerprints all over government.
Right. Yeah, it's a temperamental thing. Right. It's the old thing that folks on the right go into business, and folks on the left go into government to make rules to tell people what to do.
There's got to be. I have to imagine that there's a disconnect. There's got to be some progressives who are exhausted from this fight, right? Looking at the abortion law in Texas versus Roe v. Wade, that you have academics, yes, the people that sit in the halls of Georgetown or GW that write these white papers that end up in the hands of senators and congressmen, they're a different breed. There's got to be people out there who maybe they want to ban plastic bags where they live, but they don't wake up in the morning thinking about how people live their lives in other states far, far away, people they've never met before. There've got to be progressives that are sick of the battle over the federal government and just want to live their lives in accordance with their own politics. And I know there's not a lot of live and let live progressivism anymore, but when you look at things like the Article 5 convention, if we stopped gouging each other and said, look, you do you and we'll do us and we'll all be happy and we'll just protect ourselves from the Russians or the Chinese and we'll come together to connect the states with interstate highway system and things like that. There's got to be some progressives like, you know what, I don't like anything that you stand for. As long as you're not bothering me, I won't bother you.
Right. Look, I'm not sure if there are very many people like that out there.
At least not in leadership.
Not in leadership, right, exactly. I think that most people maybe are apolitical in the sense that they haven't really thought any of this through. They cheer for one side or the other, and it's not a very examined position on the issues. But what if I told you, what if you're pro-life, and I told you, well, you know what, we can have pro-life in one state, and unlimited abortion in another state. If your sincerely held conviction is that it's wrong, it's that it's murder, then you would want to stop that too, at least where it was within your power.
You might want to convince people, right? The 10th Amendment, I mean, you look, yeah, you're right. Ideologically, like intellectually, if we're just talking about these things, yes. But if we're serious constitutionalists, we'd have to say, okay, the states that want to end this barbaric procedure would do it, and then we would try to convince other people that this is the right way to go about dealing with this issue, versus let's just have a court case and a bunch of unelected people, 5-4, making a ruling that we now call settled law.
Right.
It's amazing how intellectuals on the left will scream and yell about Donald Trump or MAGA or Republicans, and then they advocate for the most undemocratic things in the world.
Sure. But, I mean, we know that, every progressive, every leftist would be very happy to get their agenda, installed.
By any means necessary.
By those anti-democratic means. I mean, absolutely. When they say, and this is the great tell in American politics today, when they say democracy or our democracy, especially that phrase, it just means whatever I want.
I've been begging, especially Republicans, stop saying our democracy. The democratic
Republicans
process.
say it?
Well, some do. The democratic process and democracy are two totally different things. The difference between a democratic republic with federalism and democracy is the difference between the mob rule, offer them what a bread and circus for the vote, and saying, yes, we like to choose our leaders, but here's the tight parameters they have to operate in, no more, no less. when we start to use that phrase, our democracy, it's no wonder why some people think that some of these red and blue states cannot coexist, because they've decided that the majority of the 8 major metropolitan cities or 10 major metropolitan cities should be able to run roughshod over the rest of the country. And in a majority of places, people don't want tyranny of the majority.
Yeah, I mean, I agree.
So, do you think we could reason with these people? I mean, we've got less than you don't think we can reason?
I don't think we can reason with these people because, you know, look, I give them the benefit of the doubt. I absolutely do. I think that they believe what they believe. I think that that we should, you know, treat them with respect, you know, that they're due, you know, because they feel this way, and you know, and then we should start thinking about creating institutions of ourselves that get us away from, you know, being under their thumb, you know, from financial to entertainment to educational to, I mean, what have you. We're in a, you know, us on the right, I mean, we're in a real deficit when it comes to all these places. Banks, insurance companies, you know, film studios.
Woke is taking over everything.
Woke is everything. So we need to build our own. And I think that we can do it. I think that we have a population that's big enough to support many, many big businesses. I mean, you know, just the folks that voted for Trump alone, I mean, that's like more than the population of France. And France has its own banks and you know, film companies and book publishing companies and what have you. So I think it could be done.
Well, I'll say this in close. Putting all this faith in Biden, he's failing at everything, right? The federal government is failing at everything it touches right now. Maybe if these people get exhausted enough, they will put their faith back into states' rights, state sovereignty, and the 10th Amendment, but I will not hold my breath. David, thank you so much for joining us in the studio.
Thank you.
All right, here we go. Time now for parting shots, and today's parting shot is at Gavin Newsom's California. What is wrong with you people? Well, safe for now, Gavin Newsom just signed a law banning, get this, small off-road gas engines, including lawnmowers and chainsaws. The Washington Examiner reports, quote, the new law will ban the sale of all off-road gas-powered engines, including generators, lawn equipment, pressure washers, chainsaws, weed trimmers, and even golf carts. Under the new law, these machines must be zero emissions, meaning they will have to either be battery-powered or plug-in. Newsom banning future purchases of gas-powered lawn equipment continues his pursuit of making California run exclusively on green energy. The governor signed an executive order September 2020 mandating that all of California's new car sales be zero emissions models by 2035. The order also requires new bus and truck sales, whenever feasible, to be zero emissions vehicles by 2045. Okay. This is the state where they just imposed a new education mandate where you have to take ethnic studies to graduate from government-run schools, and they passed a new law banning stealthing. What's that? Well, in the state where they decriminalized knowingly spreading AIDS, they now have a law that says don't be rude and take off a condom during intercourse without verbal consent. So, knowingly spreading AIDS, not a big deal. Playing a trick on someone, you might go to jail. But the gas engines, is the technology there? Who cares? But I can't wait to see what happens when the elites with their sprawling mansions start to go unkempt. That's the proper word, by the way. So yeah, there are some battery-powered machines out there and devices for, you know, keeping things nice and neat. But large-scale lawnmowers? What about generators? What if you have a power outage and you can't turn the power on and the only thing that would save you might be a gas-powered engine? Who cares? This is the Golden State, and they've got their golden boy Gavin Newsom, and now he's got a mandate to do whatever he wants for the left. It's gonna be great in California. By the way, I know we already did a side note to the parting shot, my governor, Phil Murphy of New Jersey, who's up for re-election, just said out loud that he wants to turn New Jersey into the California of the East Coast. Can you hear the U-Hauls firing up to flee? We're right. They're wrong. That's the end of the story. The arguments, this television program cannot be broken. Make sure you catch me on SiriusXM Patriot Channel 125, noon to 3 East, 9 to noon West from Dallas, Texas. I'm Andrew Wilkow. Thank you for watching Blaze TV.